Hi everybody and welcome to Duglight Gaming. For some of us this will be our fourth Lantern Festival. For others this will be their first. Each festival had its own unique character interactions, animated cutscenes, and minigames. So for those who were not able to experience the past Lantern Rites or just don't remember what happened during them, I figured it would be helpful to have a recap video. This video will go over the last 3 Lantern Rites to help you prepare for this year's. There will be no plot spoilers for the Lantern Rite 2024 in this video, unless you consider Cloud Retainer and Gaming being released in 4.4 a spoiler. But let's start with some background first. Lantern Rite is based off of Chinese New Year's, or the Spring Festival, Chungjie. Other Southeast Asian countries also celebrate the holiday and call it Lunar New Year, though that's slightly incorrect because China's calendar is lunisolar, not just a lunar calendar. Lantern Rite gets its name from the Lantern Festival, or Shangyuan Festival, celebrated on the 15th day of the New Year that signifies the end of the New Year's celebrations. The Lantern Festival can trace its origin back 2,000 years and involves the lighting of red lanterns to ward off evil spirits and welcome good luck for the new year. Each Lantern Rite has had a different animal-shaped lantern as the centerpiece of the festival. These are a reference to the real-world large lanterns created in Shanghai and other cities for the Lantern Festival. These lanterns aren't related to Adepti and sadly don't float, and so can't fly away into the night sky, which is why Genshin includes the magical rock Plosterite to help its large lanterns float. There's plenty of other connections to China's Spring Festival, but I'll go through those as they come up in each Lantern Rite. So with that, let's get into our first Lantern Rite, launched during the 1.3 update. Lantern Rite was the first big temporary event Genshin released. 1.2 was our first area expansion with the release of Dragonspine, so its event wasn't what you would call big. But it's important to keep in mind this was Genshin's first big event when it comes to the things it's missing. Yes, I am talking about the lack of playable character cameos. Except Zhao. You get a lot of Zhao. And a random Kaya? The heck is he doing here? I don't know, but I do know the heavy push for Zhao is because this was his first banner release, and the game dubs were really proud of Zhao. Why? He's a cool dude. They just really wanted to show everyone this cool dude. Look how cool he is. What plot was there for this event? Well, I'm going to show my hand a little with this one, but I always called it the Zhao dating sim event, because that's the only memorable part of this event. The first act is all about us learning what a Lantern Rite is. Really holding the hand of the foreign audience with this one. The second act is Traveler learning a treasure hoarder is plotting to ruin the festival, which leads to the Traveler going back to Mondstadt and asking Kaya about it. Like, I know he knows treasure hoarder stuff. Could they really find no way for it to be a Liyue character that gave Traveler the intel? Regardless, Traveler learns the location of the treasure hoarders, goes undercover as a Fatui, and then decides to just beat them all up instead. We learned the thief's plan was, pretty stupid. He wanted to steal the Plosterite floating rock, and so planned to cut the tethers and then somehow get the floating rock to sink into the ocean, to hide it until the authorities stopped looking for it, and then sell it. No, he did not have an idea for how he was going to get the rock to sink. He hadn't even got that far. But dumb plan stopped, we are free to go on with Act 3, the Zhao dating sim. So I ended up going a little too in-depth about this chapter of the events, so I decided to, and say it with me now, make a separate video. I know I keep doing this. There's just so much stuff, man. So a separate video breaking down Zhao and Aether's friendship throughout the whole game will come out at some point. All you need to know for the recap is that Traveler wants to see the lanterns with Zhao. Zhao isn't a people person. Traveler throws a mini Lantern Rite for him at the hotel instead. Traveler and Zhao walk back to the harbor together, but split up as Traveler heads down to watch the lanterns and the end cutscene with the release of all the lanterns place. And that ends the story quest of Lantern Rite. As you can see, it is extremely lacking in Liyue character cameos. And again, that's because it was the first one and they didn't know how many cameos they would need to do in these events going forward. There was also only one event minigame, the fan favorite Theater Mechanicus. Ever since its unveiling at this Lantern Rite, fans of the minigame have been asking for it to be added to the game permanently. Like, I'm sure there's some that would have preferred it get released instead of the TCG. Theater Mechanicus is a tower defense style game. There's portals and each round monsters come out of one of the portal and try to leave through another. Your job is to place elemental towers to cause elemental reactions to kill them. It wasn't exactly hard, but it was extremely satisfying to build up your defenses to the point where you could just stand there and watch the towers take everything out. But Terry, if there was only one minigame, does that mean there was nothing to do during Lantern Rite? No. Because we had Lantern Rite Tales. You see, what this event lacked in player character interactions, it made up for it in NPC help quests. Just so many side quests. But hey, they gave us materials to make those Mingjiao lanterns, and now we are the only ones in the game with these. It's sad this is what counts as flexing 3 years into this game. But that was about it for the first Lantern Rite. The Pick a Free 4-star banner happened, and there was an event shop, but like I said, the other Lantern Rites have a lot more in them. So anyway, let's get on to the second Lantern Rite, Fleeting Colors in Flight. Since 2.4 had Lantern Rite happening, miHoYo used the 2.4 update to expand Liyue's story. The plot in Liyue hadn't moved forward since the end of the Archon quest during 1.1. Meanwhile, Mondstadt's plot has not moved forward ever. I'm sure they'll get a plot update eventually. And so miHoYo used 2.4 to introduce the new characters Shinha and Yunjin, along with the Archon quest interlude that gets the Jade Chamber back into the sky. These things are important as the end of the festival cutscene animation happens on top of the Jade Chamber. I won't be recapping those quests, I just felt like it was important to mention them because of their large connection to the festival. Each Lantern Rite, miHoYo tries to focus on a different part of the Spring Festival traditions. The first year was just explaining lanterns and the Lantern Festival part, while the second one focuses on the inclusion of traditional Chinese fireworks and a brief look at To the In-Laws Day, along with a discussion about working through the holidays versus overworking. So let's get into the plot so I can break those down. Traveler returns to Liyue for the Lantern Festival. They learn this year's festival will be focusing on fireworks and get a brief history lesson on fireworks. Here's the real-world version. A Chinese inventor mix sulfur, charcoal, and nitrate together. And well, let's just say he learned that made things go boom. But with this knowledge, the first firework was born. Well, firecracker. They hadn't figured out the airborne part yet. But don't worry, because the Imperial Army put together that if you put a projectile in an enclosed space with this exploding powder, the projectile will be shot forward, and thus the first cannon was born. The inventors saw the military launching things with the exploding powder and thought, hey, what if we launch the exploding powder with more exploding powder? Mix in a few other chemicals to change the color, and boom! Giant airborne firework shows! Firecrackers and then fireworks became a huge part of the Spring Festival. Where do you think the tradition of setting off fireworks at the stroke of midnight to welcome in the new year came from? China. The answer is China. Setting off firecrackers was believed to scare off evil spirits that gathered during the festival. Baby, you're a firework! Okay, I'm sorry, Xiao. Keep doing your job, buddy. So, fireworks are important, and Ningguang decides they'll be the centerpiece of this year's Lantern Rite. Keqing takes this and decides to make the best fireworks show Teyvat has ever seen, spanning all of Liyue. Ningguang is a little worried about how much work such a feat will require, and asks the Traveler to keep an eye on Keqing so she doesn't overwork herself. Traveler goes to Zhongli for advice, allowing Hu Tao, Shangling, and Guoba to have a short cameo. Zhongli recommends vague posting about Keqing to Keqing. Well, alright then. Before Traveler can write out their vague post, Keqing herself shows up and asks the Traveler for help. She wants to deliver gifts to the Adepti this year, but Ganyu's already left on holiday leave, so Traveler is the only person Keqing knows that can just walk up to the Adepti and say hey without getting smited. So they make a quick visit to Manaping, running into Yanfei in the process before heading to Cloud Retainer's abode. So this is the part that's a reference to the In-Laws Day. It's called that because the main focus of the day is married daughters bringing their husband and kids back to visit her parents for a day. None of the player characters can be married because that ruins the hot single waifus gotcha system, so instead miHoYo uses country girl moved to the big city for work to get the point across. I'm not going to get into whether or not Cloud Retainer counts as their mom because
as a youngling, you did so love to scurry around the place while one's attention was monopolized by mechanisms.
She is. Just know that the traditions for this day include the daughters bringing treats and snacks to give to their mother for their mom to share among the neighbors, which Shinha does. We learned said neighbors left on an adventure without Cloud Retainer, so she would have been alone this Lantern Rite if we hadn't come to visit. Basically a PSA reminding folks to set aside time to visit their aging widowed parents during the holidays. With Cloud Retainer off the list and the neighbors out of town, the last Adeptus on Keqing's list is Zhao. We go to Wangshu Inn and run into our Baiju and Chi-Chi cameo. The two are working through Lantern Rite and are currently traveling to collect herbs some patients in the pharmacy need. This is an intentional shout out from miHoYo's team to all the healthcare workers that work through the holidays like the Spring Festival and Christmas. Zhao's cameo is brief as Keqing tries to offer him the gift and he explains that he doesn't destroy the demons for any sort of human reward. Traveler again invites him to Lantern Rite and again gets a no. Maybe next year, buddy. Most of the characters actually have bonus dialogue if you find them in the open world. This is where the gender fluid Zhongli retcon is found, but we're not going to get into all those mini cameos. Ketching learns some fireworks have been stolen and the plot returns. Traveler goes out to the middle of nowhere with Ketching on the hunt for some treasure hoarders. They run into Singcho and Chungnyeon. Anyway, crimes. Ketching and Traveler find the treasure hoarders and learn they were stealing the fireworks to terrorize the people in the city and steal stuff in the confusion. The treasure hoarders are put under arrest and Ketching decides to search the area for any leftover treasure hoarders. Meanwhile, the Traveler and Paimon return to the city to ask Zhongli for more advice, since Ketching has clearly not stopped her overworking habits. The three decide the vague post should take the form of a story. It's a story about a chef who works too hard and so doesn't have time to stop and enjoy the taste of their own food. Simple story created. Traveler goes to find Ketching and they tell her the story while on the Jade Chamber waiting for the fireworks show to start. Like with all vague posts, it takes very little time for Ketching to put together that the story is about her. But she says she's actually gotten better and that she used to be even worse about taking breaks. That her setting aside time to watch the fireworks show with Traveler is the improvement, which just sounds like not enough. That her, like Ganyu, work way too much and really need to learn to take more breaks. But whatever, it's time for the Lantern Rite cutscene, I guess. Ningguang and Ketching's new outfits are revealed and the fireworks join the lanterns in the sky. And all characters are shown sharing Lantern Rite with family and friends. One would think this was the end of the event quest, but one would be wrong. Someone apparently decided Beidou and Ningguang flirting about Ningguang's new dress wasn't enough shipping ammo, and so decided to add a bonus event quest all about them. After the festival, we learn a lot of Ningguang's valuables from the old Jade Chamber are still floating around in the ocean. Ningguang has asked Beidou to collect the things, but worries it's too big of a job even for her. She then asks Traveler to go help. Oh, and Beidou's payment includes things other than Mora.
Payment is one aspect of it, but I also compensate her in other ways.
Anyway, we go find Beidou and Xinyan, since MiHoYo writers realized they didn't have her show up all of Lantern Rite. Whoops. Well, she's here now, and together we hop in our tiny boat for some boat minigames and treasure hoarder battles. After gathering all the goods, we're sent back by Beidou to tell Ningguang we have found most of her stuff and to start prepping the reward. We never learn what the reward is, just that it's not Mora, and apparently takes time to prep.
Let's just say it's a little complicated.
What does it mean, Ningguang? What does it mean? Who knows, but that's the end of the extra quest. You can find Beidou and Xinyan afterwards, and Beidou announces that her only plans for the holiday is to go up to the Jade Chamber tomorrow to play chess. Thank you, Urban Dictionary. Thank you. But with that, I think we can get to the minigames. There are at least more minigames than the first Lantern Rite. Gathering Ningguang's treasures was one of those minigames, along with your own firework maker. Folks got some really sick pics with the custom firework bursts in photo mode. They gave us chances to re-challenge the temporary domain boss. You could even do it in co-op mode. And the last minigame was shadow pictures. What does this shadow blob look like? If you guessed the Jade Chamber, you'd be right. Good luck perfectly lining it up so the computer agrees with you, though. I'm sorry. This was just like one of my least favorite minigames. But I think that was everything important from the second Lantern Rite. So let's move on to the third. The third Lantern Rite's focus was music and the debate between traditional music versus pop idol music at cultural festivals like the Spring Festival. The conclusion MiHoYo comes to is that both can coexist. Allowing idol groups to perform at the Spring Festival doesn't mean traditional instruments and performances have to be excluded. And you thought you'd get through a video without me explaining the hidden social commentary in a Genshin event. Personally, the moment when Madame Ping starts playing and the orchestra syncs up with her nearly brought me to tears the first time I heard it. So I personally feel like they hit the nail on the head. But I'll get into that more when we reach the end cutscene animation. First, we have a new Dendro Liyue character to introduce. Yao Yao. Zhongli sends Traveler off to find some bamboo shoots for him, and they run into Yao Yao on the way. She's Madame Ping's third and youngest disciple, with a habit of helping complete strangers in need. We find her helping a man from Fontaine who has fallen into a waterfall. The man explains that he's trying to find the origin of a family legend. His ancestor had also fallen into a lake, but had heard a melody so beautiful it distracted him from his fear of drowning. The ancestor comes to on dry land again with a beautiful woman sitting beside him. He tries to follow her to thank her, but no matter how many steps he takes, he's always the same distance away from her. He thanks her from a distance and decides to return to Fontaine and become a bard in an attempt to replicate the tune. The story has been embellished over time, with Fontainians deciding the mystery woman was a fairy/Oceanid and giving her the name the Lady Overlooking the Lake. Most likely a reference to the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian legend that gave King Arthur one of his magic swords. But back in current day, Dvorak had sworn to search the whole earth until he found the true origin of the story, and possibly the descendants of the lady in the story. A vague hint from the god of music himself, Barbados, had directed him towards Liyue. So here he was. Yao Yao decides Ganyu is the smartest person she knows, which Ouch, Yao Yao. Madame Ping and Yanfei are sitting right there. But Traveler agrees, so they head to see Ganyu. The group runs into Xinyan on the way, and the idea of performing a concert during Lantern Rite is born. They do run into Madame Ping on the way to Ganyu, but decide to ask her for her opinion about the music festival instead of the myth. Finally reaching Ganyu, we learn she has no idea what we're talking about when it comes to a magic fairy lady. But she is able to help us set up the music festival. She asks us to come back tomorrow so she has time to work out a plan for the festival, and that tomorrow she'll take us to Cloud Retainer and the other Adepti to ask them about the fairy tale. Main part of the quest completed for the day, Traveler is asked by Kitching to go help Yelan deal with a music thief. Just to have something including Yelan, since she was the newest character at the time. Filler completed, a few days later Traveler meets back up with Ganyu. The two, plus Paimon, head to Cloud Retainer's abode, only to find her not there. The three are left without adult supervision for not even 5 minutes before deciding the best way to attract this music adeptus was to drown Traveler. Now let's pause and think for a moment. The Traveler is seemingly in mortal peril. Who could possibly be the one to come? And it's Zhao. Yep, that sure is Zhao. And man, is this awkward. Traveler literally goes mute, not saying anything for most of the conversation, as Paimon is left to explain. Oh, and Shinha's here too. Guess it would be weird if she didn't come outside after hearing Paimon scream about someone drowning in the koi pond of all things. It's determined the fairy lady wasn't a Yaksha or Shinha, seeing as she wasn't born yet. Regardless, Zhao turns to leave and Traveler finally speaks up again. Zhao says he wouldn't be much help in the search, and one last thing.
Your actions here caused others a great deal of worry. Do not repeat them again in the future.
The others being Zhao. Traveler, you caused Zhao a great deal of worry. Don't make him worry like that, man. Traveler didn't even call Zhao's name, and Zhao still came as promised to save him, only for it to be staged? You gave Zhao a heart attack, Traveler. He thought you were legit drowning in Cloud Retainer's koi pond of all things. But still, don't do it again, because he will still come and save you, damn it. And yeah, Traveler owes Zhao so much almond tofu after this. Foreshadowing. But anyway, Zhao leaves and Shinha decides to help us try to solve the mystery. Cloud Retainer went on an errand that morning, so all the group could really do was wait around for her return. At which point we learn Shinha doesn't know what music is, which ends off kind of cute as she takes us to a quiet meditation spot to listen to the music of nature. Cloud Retainer finally arrives and Shinha exits stage right. Cloud Retainer immediately knows what Adeptus Traveler is talking about and takes them to Guli Plains. We learn more about Cloud Retainer, Street Ward Rambler, and Guizhong. Back before the Archon War, all the Liyue gods and Adeptus used to gather at the Guli Assembly for Lantern Rite. Cloud Retainer developed a rivalry with Guizhong because they were both inventors. Street Ward Rambler and Guizhong became good friends because they both loved music, but also argued because Guizhong believed a machine could be built to replicate a melody, while Street Ward Rambler believed a musician put their soul into each performance, and that emotion could never be fully replicated by a machine just playing the notes. They never came to an agreement on the argument, and Guizhong sadly died during the Archon War. Madame Ping continued to compose the music until she completed what could be considered her magnum opus, but Cloud Retainer only ever heard her perform it once. When asked why, Madame Ping's answer was
Though
this.
the strings that played that melody survive, the one who inspired it is gone. Tell me, Cloud Retainer, when the one attuned to my soul is no longer here, who else could hope to understand this tune?
Which is what I am now going to explain. You see, the story of Guizhong and Street Ward Rambler is actually based on a real Chinese myth about the musician Boya and a carpenter named Zong. Boya struggled to find anyone who could understand his music. One day he met a simple carpenter, and when he played his music, the carpenter was able to recognize the feeling of the soaring mountaintops and crashing waves in the music. Boya was excited to find the first person to fully understand his music. Boya swears to return and play more music for his new best friend. When he finally returns, Zong has passed away. Heartbroken, Boya performs one final piece at Zong's tomb before smashing his instrument and swearing never to play again. The phrase "zhi yang," to know the tone, has come to mean a very close friend who basically understands your very soul, which is why Madame Ping's quote includes the "one attuned to my soul" line, which means it's about platonic soulmates. Which, yeah, I was expecting a romantic, sapphic tragedy, but queer platonic soulmates is nice too. This myth is so important to the region it came from, it's considered intangible cultural heritage. For context, lion dancing is also categorized as intangible cultural heritage. It's also important to mention that Madame Ping and Boya play the same instrument, the guqin, a 7-stringed zither. Once Cloud Retainer finishes her story, Traveler and Ganyu recommend she go talk to Madame Ping about Guizhong and the good old days Cloud Retainer clearly misses. Cloud Retainer eventually naturally agrees, and they all travel to the courtyard to visit Madame Ping. They chat about Guizhong and how much they miss their old friends before Paimon asks if Madame Ping would like to perform the finished music piece at the music festival. Madame Ping decides to leave the stage to the younger generation, claiming that she's too old to play like she used to. Yanfei arrives, and Ganyu uses her as an excuse to escape more embarrassing childhood stories. Mystery of the Fairy Lady solved. Traveler shares the full story with Dvorak before we get our Lantern Rite cinematic cutscene. I will defend Hu Tao's rap, because yeah, it's a translation issue. Rap has stricter restrictions than singing, so finding words that mean the same thing and rhyme and have enough syllables is incredibly hard. But I don't have to defend anything when the orchestra piece is performed, because man, is it so good.
Listen, that must be Madame Ping!
Yeah, it's still probably my favorite Lantern Rite cutscene. Update, it's now tied with the 4th Lantern Rite for best cutscene, because this year's one was just that good. But Lantern Rite isn't finished when the cinematic cutscene plays, and we still have one of the best character interaction cutscenes in all of Genshin to go through, so buckle up. Hu Tao invites Traveler to what's framed as a friendsgiving of sorts, but it quickly develops into just a full-on family holiday dinner. Traveler only knew Hu Tao and Zhongli would be there, but Hu Tao's friends Shangling, Xingqiu, and Chungyun are there too. For a big twist, Hu Tao walks in with Zhao? Hu Tao had somehow convinced Zhao to come into the harbor and eat dinner with everyone. He didn't expect this many people, but it should be fine. He just has to pretend to not know who Zhongli is. And then the wind blows in. Finally, after 2 years, the two oldest Archons are in the same room together, only to immediately decide it would be funnier to pretend they don't know each other, and to throw shade back and forth disguised as compliments, leading to one of the most complicated scenes of who knows what I've honestly ever seen. Okay, so Traveler knows everything. Good for us. Hu Tao knows everyone except for Venti. He walked in off the street, but she doesn't know everyone's connection to each other. Zhao knows everyone on the supernatural side of the table, but all the humans think Zhao's the only supernatural being here. Since Zhongli is pretending to not know Venti, Venti pulls Zhao under the bus by saying they had run into each other just before Lantern Rite. Zhao quickly remembers he does not know Lord Barbados' human cover story, and so struggles to word why they would have ever met each other. Hu Tao pulls the attention away from Zhao to introduce herself and Zhongli to Venti. While talking about Zhongli, she says he's so smart, one almost wonders if he's an Adeptus. Hey, Zhao, you're an Adeptus. You'd know if Zhongli was one, right? All eyes are on Zhao as he is once again pulled under this bus. Zhao decides to play the not all Adeptus know each other card, and it only somewhat works. Meanwhile, Venti is failing at cover stories because he tries to say he heard about the music festival, but it wasn't planned until the very last minute. News about it won't reach Mondstadt until after Lantern Rite is over, and yet Venti is here. Zhao clearly starts to get overwhelmed by all the lies, and so Traveler comes up with an excuse to get them both outside for some fresh air. Traveler tries to check how Zhao's feeling, and Zhao explains how he's not used to all the lying games. Adeptus are brutally honest. Those social gatherings did not prepare him for two gods incognito. Zhangling lures the two back in with the promise of dessert, specifically almond tofu, yay. And Hu Tao decides the most distinguished guest should relight the incense to bring everyone good luck in the new year. This leads to a funny game of not it, as everyone compliments someone else so that they have to be the one to light the incense. Until they reach Paimon, who just takes the compliment and lights the incense. From what I could find, this isn't an actual Spring Festival tradition. It's why Hu Tao says she made it up on the spot. Instead, this is supposed to be a stand-in for a different New Year's Eve meal tradition, the who's paying argument. It's very common for the elders of the family to argue over who's paying this year for the family meal if it happens at a restaurant. Splitting the bill is out of the question. This argument could take 20 to 30 minutes and happens not just at New Year's, but that's the most common time for the whole family to get together, so the most common time for this argument to happen. Obviously, Hu Tao is hosting everyone, and most of the guests don't have the funds to cover the bill at Xinyun Kiosk, So instead, the writers came up with this incense idea. After the incense is lit by Paimon, the group chats until nightfall, before saying their goodbyes and leaving for their cameo spots in the open world. Which means we finally reached the end of this Lantern Rite quest, which just leaves the minigames. This Lantern Rite actually has the most minigames of all of them, at 4. The 4.4 Lantern Rite went back to 3 minigames. Regardless, for 3.4 there was a 2D platformer, a ship battle game, a coin collecting obstacle course, and a timed combat trial. I don't know which one I would say was my favorite, but none of them were horrible to complete or anything. But with that, we're finally finished recapping all the Lantern Rites. I hope I was able to teach you something, or at the very least take you on a fun trip down memory lane. Which Lantern Rite was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. And please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more recaps and lore breakdowns in the future.